Hey everyone and welcome. In this video we debunk an article in the Express titled "Britain's Furious as EU Opens the Door for Sturgeon's Independence Bid. Mind your own business."
And I do believe that we have rotten politics, and I'm not using that as an exaggeration. Rotten politics in this country at the moment.
Now this is a media spin. Ursula said any country that meets requirements, Scotland doesn't. Now in the words of Malcolm X, the media is the most powerful entity on earth. They have the power to make the innocent guilty and to make the guilty innocent, and that's power because they control the mind of the masses. But anyway, let's read. Britons have told Ursula von der Leyen to mind your own business after the European Commission President provided Nicola Sturgeon with a huge boost in her desperate pursuit for Scottish independence. She didn't actually, but we'll have a look at that shortly. The issue of a second Scottish independence referendum and breaking up the UK has come under the spotlight further as Britain continues to push forward on post-Brexit trade talks with the European Union. Scotland's First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, the wee cranky, is demanding Westminster transfer powers to Holyrood to hold a second referendum. Well, you don't need a second referendum. The first one was only 4 years ago, and if I remember rightly, wasn't that a once-in-a-lifetime referendum? Yeah, it was, which Scotland voted against by 63% to 37%. Boris Johnson has continued to reject the calls, but European Commission Chief Ms von der Leyen, on back, has now opened the door to Scotland potentially joining the bloc. Hungarian MEP Istvan, I can't say that, of the Progressive Alliance of Socialists and Democrats group, Communistan, asked on Monday what the possibility was of Scotland breaking free of the prison of Great Britain. Mr. Rühle said Scotland cannot be held captive in the prison of Great Britain. Nicola Sturgeon's party is pushing for another referendum on Scottish independence for 2020, which, given the results of the Scottish National Party in the last election of 12th of December 2019, could have a unequivocal result. I don't think so. In response, Ms von der Leyen said any European state which respects and promotes the values of the EU may apply to become a member of the Union. Have you noticed something that was lacking in that whole statement? Yep, that's it. Scotland. She didn't mention Scotland. She was just saying there is a possibility they'd have to apply, but they'd have to respect and promote the values of the EU. That's slang for do as you're told. And also meet the requirements. Now we'll have a look through that very shortly. Now, the thing that got me the most about the whole of that was Scotland cannot be held captive in the prison of Great Britain. This is from an authoritarian state, Hungary. Firstly, you little cockwomble, Scottish people voted on freedom from Britain. Guess what? They voted to stay. Why? Because the Scots aren't as thick as the SNP losers. That's why. Let's look at why I think Scotland would not get into the EU alone. Number one, the EU will not take a country that doesn't reach its stringent requirements. And Scotland has a £13 billion shortfall. That means they spend £13 billion per year more than the country's revenue. So they spend more than they make by £13 billion. On top of that, to get accepted, Scotland would have to get 27 member states to agree. Why wouldn't they, you ask? The why is because if a separatist nation joined the EU, all other European separatist movements would gain fuel. Oh, there are quite a few as well, I'm not too sure if you know, but we'll go through a few of them. Belgium has got the Flanders movement and the Wallonia. Cyprus, they've got the de facto state and Northern Cyprus. Czech Republic, they've got Moravia. Denmark, they've got Bornholm and the Faroe Islands. Finland, they've got a land. France, they've got quite a few. Alsace, French Basque, Brittany, Corsica, Occitania, Flanders, Provence, Northern Catalonia. Italy, Friulian Front, Trieste, Lombardy, Sardinia, Sicilians, Tyrol and Veneto. And the Netherlands have got Frisia and Groningen. All of these are active separatist movements. All would jump on the chance to gain India themselves. So if Scotland did get into the EU, every single one of them would be saying, hold on a minute, you backed them for independence, therefore we want to be backed for our independence. Do you think any of those nations, Netherlands, Italy, France, Finland, Denmark, Germany, Cyprus, Czech Republic, do you think any of them would want to risk their own countries by taking in Scotland? Because I don't. Von der Leyen said all countries that meet requirements can join. Scotland, I have shown, does not come anywhere near requirement level. Now let's see what Scotland stand to lose if they leave anyway without joining the EU. EU rules are no more than 3% budget deficit. Scotland sits at 9%. 8% if oil prices go up again, which I'm not too sure when that's going to happen. To get to 3%, which is what the EU rules are, SNP would have to impose austerity for at least 10 years, and it would make the last austerity package we've gone through for 10 years look tame. So you got that to look forward to, Scots. Next is tourism, which is about 5% of Scotland's GDP and 7.7% of employment in Scotland. As an example, just as an example, in 2014, 15.5 million overnight tourism trips were made to Scotland, which netted them £4.8 billion. Out of those 15.5 million overnight tourism trips, 12.5 were from the UK. And out of the 4.8 billion that they made from the tourism, 2.9 of it was from the UK. So they'd basically effectively be losing 2.9 billion per year just from tourism. On top of that, we've got exports. Now the export stats are, at the moment, all exports from Scotland, rake them in, 78.6 billion per year. Out of that 78.6 billion, 16% of it goes to the EU, which is 12 billion. 21% of it goes to the rest of the world, which is 16 billion. And 63% of all exports out of Scotland go to the UK. That's 49 billion pounds they'd be losing every single year, because the UK wouldn't be trading with Scotland anymore. We'd be trading with America and the Commonwealth and Australia and New Zealand and everybody else that wants to trade with us. Scotland wouldn't have anything that we would find valuable at that point, would it? Let me know if you think they would. So they want to trade with the ones that buy the least off them, i.e. the EU. You see where I'm going with this lack of intelligence theme? All of this combined, in my opinion, is why Scotland will never be allowed to join the EU. Never in 100 years. Even if they put you through austerity for the next 10 years, I still don't think they'll get you down to the 3% needed to join the EU anyway. So it's never going to happen. If the Scots did choose to leave anyway, they'd suffer terribly. If they forced an Indy and won, it'd be political suicide. They wouldn't have the clout of being part of the UK anymore. They would be a tiny nation surrounded by vicious countries. Not only political suicide, but economic suicide. I've already shown they would lose roughly 51.9 billion per year off their income. 59 billion. But let me know what you think, everyone. I'd like to know what you think thoughts are on this. Do you think this is just the media spinning it so that it sounds like the EU have offered them a pipeline? Because we all know the EU don't bend their rules. They've not done for us as a union, so they're not going to do it on their own, are they? I think this is a way for the EU to try and split our union up for revenge, and that's all it is. It's got nothing to do whatsoever with Scotland and the Scottish people and their independence. This is a way for the EU to attack us because they know we've finished them. The big elephant in the room as well, what I've not actually said, everyone, the EU won't be here in a year anyway, so I don't know why they're even talking about it. Scotland have got no chance of joining something that's going to be a bad memory by the time they got the chance to. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit the like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell icon, share it out if you can, everyone. That would be really, really helpful. Stay safe, and I'll see you on the next one.